Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So turns out last week, the one thing I didn't predict is probably the most obvious thing to predict. We were going to get an album bomb from 21 Savage and Metro Boomin. Now, this is one of those cases where I'm not really about to complain about that. It was a pretty good album. I'm not against the charts getting a solid shakeup before the end of the Billboard year, and it could make for something ultimately pretty interesting, especially if any of this sticks around. And yet somehow, that story's going to wind up getting overshadowed by a number one that was really just a matter of time, but somehow frustrates me with its circumstance the more I give it any sort of thought. You know what, actually, let's just get to the top 10. Savage Love by Jawsh 685 and Jason Derulo went to number 1, courtesy of a remix with BTS. Now, there's a lot of really questionable discourse and bad takes all around this. I've seen a lot circulating who is using who to get to the number 1, which feels really skeevy no matter how you slice it. But to me, this seems like a collaboration where both sides kind of get what they wanted here, with Jason Derulo getting his first number 1 since What You Say, and BTS giving themselves another chart-topping hit. Now, again, it's not gonna last. The radio is actively sliding away from this song, and it's long been short on streaming, but no, that's not the point. So long as they got the initial stat, as there really is no dominant number 1 right now. But I think I figured out why this number 1 chasing via remix in the short term irks me and so many other people, with BTS not being alone here, but definitely being the most flagrant in recent memory. And I'm gonna make a basketball analogy to the NBA. It's the equivalent of James Harden baiting for fouls on all his step-back threes. I mean, sure, it works if it's the letter of the rules, and you'll always have fans who only care about that result, but it's also one-dimensional. It cheapens their overall appeal, which in terms of the songs that BTS has certainly made better than the hits and they've gotten this way, and it can be really obnoxious to watch, especially as I'm not sure this will translate to long-term success. Cue all the Mike D'Antoni years with James Harden. And it's not like BTS is just doing this with one song at this point, because at number 2 we got Dynamite, and courtesy of all its massive sales driven off the remixes and finally getting a bit of a radio push, it's right behind it. So then I look at WAP by Cardi B featuring Megan Thee Stallion at number 3, which unfortunately looks like it's getting pushed out prematurely because it spent the week losing radio hard, even despite remaining as strong as ever in streams. It's clear that somebody's tired of it. Then we got Mood by 24K Golden and Ian Dior up to number 4. Again, I'm rooting for this as the radio push is enormous, and it actually survived an album bomb hit to its streaming, so this has the momentum to get even higher. Hell, it blew right past Laugh Now Cry Later by Drake and featuring Lil Durk down to number 5, which skidded and fell beneath Mood in both streaming and the radio. Next are 2 songs that are stable, but they're on their way out in all channels. Blinding Lights by The Weeknd is at number 6, and Rockstar by DaBaby and Roddy Ricch is at number 7. But then we got I Hope by Gabby Barrett featuring Charlie Puth on the remix at number 8, which rode a ton of radio this week and mostly stable sales to take up its spots. But our last 2 entries are both from 21 Savage and the Metro Boomin album bomb, aka riding a ton of streaming, which translates to Runnin' at number 9 and Mr. Right Now with Drake at number 10. Knowing our luck, it's probably going to be that Drake collab that sticks the landing longer term, but I'm hoping Runnin' is the one with any sort of traction. We will have to see. But now, to the surprise of nobody, since we got an album bomb, we have a pretty hefty list of losers and dropouts. And in the latter category, we got some big ones, and also Nobody's Love by Maroon 5. Now, to be a little bit more serious, Like That by Doja Cat featuring Gucci Mane finished its collapse, as did Smile by Juice WRLD and The Weeknd. Man, that song went nowhere. Dolls on My Head by Gunna and Young Thug also exited. But now for the big entries, We Paid by Lil Baby and 42 Dugg, Die From a Broken Heart by Maddie and Tay. It made the year-end list. I'm happy. It had a frankly better run than I expected. Chasing You by Morgan Wallen, and finally, Life is Good by Future featuring Drake. But the bigger story is that nearly a full third of the Hot 100 lost traction, so alright, let's get through it. Off the debut, we had the expected sharp drop for Franchise by Travis Scott, Young Thug, and MIA down to 25. Nice remix with Future to staunch some of the bleeding. I called it. Epidemic by Polo G down to 93, and then the expected fades for Machine Gun Kelly's Album Bomb with Bloody Valentine down to 90, and Forget Me Too with Halsey down to 96. We also saw the gains for My Ex's Best Friend with Black Bear go down to 50, but also, while we're in this territory, Everywhere But On by Matt Stell also lost its gains down to 79, as did Blind by DaBaby featuring Young Thug to 99. I gotta admit, I'm surprised by that one. Then we had our continued losers, Said Some by Moneybagg Yo at 51, Rain On Me by Lady Gaga and Ariana Grande, probably on its final week at 65, Cool Again by Kane Brown at 70, and Diamonds by Sam Smith at 80. Don't worry, that song should rebound soon. Then to list through the rest here, Caramello by Ozuna at 100, Casey Talk by Youngboy Never Broke Again at 98, Girls in the Hood by Megan Thee Stallion, Do It by Chloe and Holly at 94, Relacion by Sek, Rosalia, Daddy Yankee, J Balvin, and Farruko at 92, The Bigger Picture by Lil Baby at 89, Grease by DJ Khaled at 88, Hit Different by SZA and Ty Dolla $ign at 87, and Martin and Gina by Polo G at 86. Then we had Startin' Over by Chris Stapleton at 81, Breakin' Me by Topic and A7S at 78, Cardigan by Taylor Swift at 77. Honestly, I'm a little surprised this has held on as long as it has. Wishin' Well by Juice WRLD at 62. Repeat what I just said for Cardigan. Midnight Sky by Miley Cyrus at 55. I Should Probably Go to Bed by Dan and Shay at 54. Rags to Riches by Rod Wave at 49. Tap In by Saweetie at 47. If the World Was Ending by JP Saxe and Julia Michaels at 43. The Woo by Pop Smoke, 50 Cent, and Roddy Ricch at 42, Lovin' On You by Luke Combs at 40, and Popstar by DJ Khaled and Drake at 34. Now here's the thing. We actually had no new gains this week, but a big return courtesy of going viral on TikTok, because of course it did, then that is Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. A classic song from the classic album Rumors that went to #1 in 1977. I'm not going to complain that this came back, but I do question how long it's going to stick around beyond a week or two. That seems to be the pattern with songs like these. And the bigger story, again, is the Savage Mode 2 album bomb. And with my rules in effect, here are the songs that fell below the top 40 that didn't otherwise meet my criteria for best or worst of the week. So on that list from 21 Savage and Metro Boomin, R.I.P. Love at 76, Steppin' On at 74, No Op Left Behind at 70, Snitches and Rats with Young Nudy at 61, Brand New Draco at 57, and My Dawg at 56. And yet, even with all that, here is our still considerable list of new arrivals, starting with number 91, Said and Done by 21 Savage and Metro Boomin.
Who you down to die for? I gave her my heart. She was telling lies though, sleeping with my guys though. That shit turned my heart cold.
So as per usual with album bomb entries, I want to keep this pretty short, especially as I already reviewed the album at length, and this is probably one of the best songs on it because it shows traces of that maturity and insight that 21 Savage displayed on his last project, I'm Greater Than I Was, and actually working courtesy of the softer production of the Patti LaBelle sample that's anchored off the scratchy trap piece. And the content, yeah, it's what you would expect from 21 and the flexing and a lot of the gunplay, but there's a bit more depth and a melancholic side in processing all the pains of loss and feeling like he's not breaking free of the heavier debts that weigh on his soul. Yeah, it's a bit of a prettier moment that I think some folks will expect from 21 Savage with this production, but it's also one I think that's incredibly well balanced. So yeah, check this out. Highly recommended. Number 84, Years Go By Bryson
Might
Tiller.
be able to relax right now. Pressure on me whenever I'm flat lying down. I can't keep them on my back right now.
This will not be fair, but at least for me it's true. I haven't followed Bryson Tiller at all. I was only barely aware he was putting out something new, let alone the fact that he got 3 songs on the Hot 100 this week. And that is a mistake on my part. I remember his last album doing frankly better than I expected on the Hot 100. So let's go through what we got here. And as somebody who is not a Bryson Tiller fan, I actually think this is pretty okay. Very much in his trap R&B mold with the hi-hats and his crooning, and frankly a lot of the content trying to keep his girl alongside him as he chases the hard luck of success. But the song actually feels a bit brighter than usual, with a bit more momentum behind it. The tempo is a little quicker, and the washed out samples still preserve some of the sparkle here. I'm not gonna say it's great, nothing here really rises above all that average, and it's not all that tuneful or striking without a real hook, which it doesn't really have. But you know what? It's fine enough. I don't mind this. Number 83, Always Forever by Bryson Tiller.
Say bye. Say now, girl, say bye.
Okay, second Bryson Tiller song, and it looks like he's going to hone in on a formula of watery, washed-out samples without a lot of tune behind skitters at the front of the mix and an abundance of auto-tune. So why is it so much less likable this time around? Well, part of it is because it seems like the pitch correction wants to strip the depth out of Bryson Tiller's voice to make him appear more watery, but I'd probably put more of it on the content, where it's clear that this girl's affection has run dry after a couple of years, and Bryson Tiller's trying to split the difference between demanding she just ended already, accusing her, or at least implying that she cheated, and then still wanting to get all of her attention. I mean, I get having mixed and complicated emotions in cases like this, but Bryson Tiller's delivery just makes him come across as reedy and not particularly mature here, which is a fair bit less attractive than I think he's trying to sell it as. So yeah, not nearly as much of a fan of this. Next, number 73, Levitating by Dua Lipa featuring DaBaby.
I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating.
I mean, Love Again was right goddamn there, and if you were gonna try and get physical to really stick, you don't have to go with the DaBaby remix of your song, especially as I'd argue that his Guarantee a Hit for guest features is pretty overexposed at this point. It's not guaranteed to work. Now that being said, Levitating is actually still a pretty solid new disco song with a pretty slick groove off that echoing sample, and in terms of balanced production, it is better than what DaBaby usually has had the past year or so. And even though I think his verse is the definition of pop disposability, he also doesn't really embarrass himself here either. It reminds me a lot of the pop guest verses that Ludacris would drop around 10 years ago, in that it's fine, but also very much a quick, fast paycheck and a very easy pop crossover that's pretty forgettable. As it is, song is still good, so if this is what it takes to get traction, I'm not gonna complain. But there was better. Number 59, Lovesick Girls by Blackpink. Man, Blackpink is still really trying to get that lasting traction leading up to that new album, aren't they? Now, granted, coming off of Ice Cream, you gotta think that anything else they put out would be a step up. And here's the thing, of the Blackpink songs I have heard thus far, I actually think this is really likable, but that's also because it's a flagrant retread of early 2010s club boom adjacent pop music with the big sing-along chorus, the acoustic lead-in, and the slightly washed out tones that pick up more texture as the verses develop. Hell, the only real difference here is that the synthesizers are not as obnoxious, which is kind of surprising coming from Blackpink, and that there are some slight elements of a triplet cadence in some of the lyrics, which are of course lovelorn and really a little oversold when you translate the content, but feel generally hopeful. But this is also one of those cases, like with BTS's Dynamite, where you can tell that Blackpink are pushing aside some of their established instrumental identity to make something that would be a little bit more accessible to a Western audience. And yet I also think that Blackpink's flagrant throwback might have at least worked for me a bit more, because I actually think this sounds pretty damn good. So yeah, nice surprise here. It's a sellout, but it's still good. Check it out. Number 48, Outta Time by Bryson Tiller featuring Drake.
Still playing to your palm, even though I know what you want. Been twisted of you so long.
the biggest of our Bryson Tiller debuts, and of course it's the one with Drake, shocker. And here's a question, why did you chipmunk a sample of Snow Allegra with even more creaking and clunky percussion before suffocating Bryson Tiller and even more auto-tune so it doesn't even match with Drake's opening verse and hook at all? Not a good sign that Drake's leading off the song, by the way. I mean, it's always been a pet peeve of mine for a while. If you got a song where your guest should be on an equal footing with you don't let him start, and maybe you keep the vocal production roughly the same, especially if you're both playing in the same lane of content, because it's going to lead to a case where Drake, of all people, will wind up looking more mature and balanced, and why this relationship probably didn't work out, where Bryson Tiller is once again playing the blame game and not sounding like he can back it all up. Overall, yeah, probably the worst of Bryson Tiller's debut. Not a good song, not a fan at all. Number 37, Fallin by Why Don't We?
Of adrenaline, I'm not scared to jump. If you want to, let's just fall in love for the hell of it. Maybe just keep falling.
Okay, for those of you who think this came out of nowhere, I need to provide some context surrounding who these guys are. Why Don't We is an American boy band that started out around 2016, put out an album I vaguely remember getting a bit of hype in 2018, and for this song in particular, they primed their fan base with a massive direct sales buy with signed CDs. I mean, it's got no radio, it's got no streaming, the YouTube seems pretty well timed, without a ton of streaming traction. I don't expect this to last. And wow, that might be the most flagrant sample of the black skinhead drums I have heard in a while. Which kinda irks me because this song is instead opting for more willowy voice crooning to try and blunt some of the aggression without much of the way of vocal interplay or any sense of intensity. I mean, maybe I'm just old here, but I came from a generation where pop groups at least tried to harmonize with an interesting vocal arrangement or have members with more immediately distinctive vocal texture. Now, more to the point, once you manage to pick up that this song is just trying to be a redux of 5 Seconds of Summer's Youngblood, but with less originality or flair, I can't even really get into much of the content, which tries to create a sense of panic at newfound love and just doesn't stick. But really, well, this isn't precisely bad. I do think they should try a hell of a lot harder than this, so next. Number 33, Many Men by 21 Savage and Metro Boomin.
Addies, off ass and titties. Loose. When it smoke, we pull our stickies and they call the PD. Pussy. Many men wanna kill me, dog. I feel like 50. Pussy.
Okay, maybe it's just me, but if there's already been a hit that samples what you're interpolating this year, and not only is it better than your song, but the artist who died did so tragically, maybe you could have held back releasing this. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. The strings and twinkles are ominous and borderline gothic behind some of the trap snares, and 21's flow is on point, even as he's bragging about stealing and fucking your girl while she's on coke, and the mingled blend of sex and shooting people doesn't always stick for 21 Savage's best. I mean, it eventually nails more of his dangerous side, but I'll admit, even the points where I have liked this in the past week, it's kind of cooled on me. It's not bad, but it's not great either. Number 32, Slidin by 21 Savage and Metro Boomin.
I grew up around drugs, sex, and violence. We turned off that street, we heard sirens.
Okay, this is better. Darker, hollow melodies, sharp trap hi-hats, even more spare with a great low-key hook augmented by the piano, and 21 goes through all the ways he's gonna shoot people. Although him saying that his Glock has a dildo attachment has me asking way too many questions. I mean, either way, yeah, it's a single-minded song, but it is impressively ominous, and it does work in what it sets out to be, so yeah, good song. I'm fine with this. Number 30, Don't Stop by Megan Thee Stallion featuring Young Thug.
Shake that shit, work it, bitch. Don't stop, pop that cat, just like that, shake that shit, work it, bitch.
So here's a question. What is Megan Thee Stallion's label doing with all these scattered singles? First Girls in the Hood, now this. I get trying to keep up popular momentum, but WAP is still in the top 5. And unless you're announcing an album or a project sometime soon to back this up, the scattered singles approach feels really haphazard. It reminds me a lot of when Cardi B was pushing a lot of scattered singles that went nowhere last year. And frankly, I don't think it worked all that much for her either, but at least it's this good? Well, it's different, but also not. And to explain that, you have to realize that Megan's on her flexing, steal and discard your man vibes, and while her bars feel a bit sharper, I'm not sure that they can overcome Young Thug here saying that he will cream that pussy like mayos. No, what threw me off a lot more was the grainy, abrasive synth and the eerie twinkles blended in for the hook behind the trap percussion. It sounds like something that would have come from a more sedate Death Grips or even clipping instrumental if they ever tried going mainstream. And well, I think Megan Thee Stallion sounds fine over it. Young Thug has nothing to really work with in terms of melody, and it does not flatter his tone or delivery at all. So in a way, it actually kind of makes sense this might feel like a throwaway single. It was a quick experiment. I mean, it's just kind of a shame it only works halfway. Just saying. Number 26, Rich N-Word Shit by 21 Savage and Metro Boomin featuring Young Thug.
Hopping out the PJ with a motto. Swimming in a baddie trying to drown. Every nigga with me got style.
I really don't get why 21 Savage keeps going for the luxury rap flexing, because even as he rattles through brand names disinterestedly as Young Thug talks about his cars, it's just not something that sounds natural for him. It's the same thing I have with YG, even if I will say the sex references here are a bit more toned down, and that's absolutely a good thing. If anything, I think I like the production on this a lot more than the actual content. Outside of the wonky clanks that occasionally pop up in the percussion, the spare trap side, the firmer bass, and the muted keys splashing off that ragged strings hit, and it has that precise balance between glossy glamour and genuine danger that could be a good fit for 21 at least. I mean, I still think Thugger needs more melody to fully maximize his potential, but this is better than I would normally expect given what it's trying to do for both these artists. I mean, it's not great, but it's definitely good. I'll take it. Number 19, Glock in My Lap by 21 Savage and Metro Boomin.
Cow, I ain't giving doubt. Glenwood to the flat. Used to rob it, trap. Money top, shack. Chopper bullets, splat.
Okay, this is the 21 Savage I can really like. The deeper pianos off the shuddering rumble as the trap snares slide up with the horror movie strings and the ragged subtle grinds along the hook, and 21 single-mindedly leaning in all to the murderous gangland impulses, where even as he emphasizes he's a full-time rapper, he doesn't drill anymore, he's got the capacity to kill you in plenty of different ways with a sobriety that might wind up being more unsettling. I mean, I'm not the hugest fan of how he ends his second verse with a lot of sex references, but for a song with atmosphere this impressively thick, I am comfortable saying that it's really damn potent regardless. One of the best on the album, highly recommended. Number 18, Wonder by Shawn Mendes. Well, this is honestly a little bit later than I was expecting, but again, since Shawn Mendes pulled out of his tailspin with 2018 with that self-titled album, it looks like he's building into something promising, or maybe even more ambitious with this upcoming fourth project. I'm still kind of shocked he's on album number 4 already, but different conversation. But okay, Wonder. Well, it's not what I was expecting from Shawn Mendes, because if you're looking for a guitar rollick or any sense of groove at all, this is not that. It feels like he's following the same trail of shirt-rending blasts of anxiety that are his usual lead-off singles, but this one takes all the texture and pushes it into an orchestral haze with touches of horns and slightly louder drums. Not normally what I would expect from Shawn Mendes, I gotta say. Now, I don't mind the moments that are trying to be more reflective and pensive on hoping his friends see his affection and maybe a desire to be vulnerable, but I think the hook hits an odd mark with some of its word choice. I mean, wonder, it implies uncertainty, that you might not have it. And yet if this song is actually about his relationship with Camila Cabello, it feels awfully insecure, which might be part of the point, but it's desperate but without any sense of urgency. I don't know, folks. I appreciate the bombast, I guess, but it feels like an odd misfire of a song, and honestly not one I really like, so let's pass. Number 10, Mr. Right Now by 21 Savage and Metro Boomin featuring Drake.
Slow song, turn the lights down, lay the pipe down. I ain't Mr. Right, but I'm Mr. Right now. Straight up.
Let me start by saying this song wouldn't have been all that good even if Drake wasn't here. The classy warble trying to back up 21's auto-tune crooning, it's not flattering, and he doesn't have the range nor presence to make this a convincing sex jam in the pretty underwritten verse that he has. But then Drake shows up, who might sound a bit more comfortable, but then chooses to complain about his haters online and how he dated SZA back in 08. When she was 17. I mean, I get SZA then trying to cover up with excuses of poetic license, but to me this screams of Drake telling on himself again on a song that's pretty mediocre to begin with. So no pass for this. And even though it's probably gonna stick around, it really shouldn't. And finally, number 9, Runnin' by 21 Savage and Metro Boomin.
Running, I leave by my cars. Running, 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 running. All my ops be.
You know, I'm at least happy of the songs that debuted this week from 21 that this wound up the biggest, because it is a stronger opener after the intro and a pretty damn good song to boot, as it opens up with a nice Diana Ross sample that 21 Savage flips into a much darker, piano-accented hollowness. Now, again, 21 defaulting to all the references to all the plastic surgery he's bought for women is a weird flex, but okay. But eventually he gets back to his comfort zone of killing people, even despite all of his success, and I will say it's a better fit. Although I will say if this is 21's most flashy writing on this collab, I do think there are more steps he could have taken to fully match the power of Metro Boomin's production, which is consistently the star of this project, and I do think 21 falls a bit short. But still, not a bad week. Worse is going Out of Time by Bryson Tiller, with dishonorable mention going to Mr. Right Now by 21 Savage and Metro Boomin. Both songs have Drake involved, and they don't wind up all that better for it. Although I will mention the latter only just beat out Wonder by Shawn Mendes, which I would argue just falls completely flat and isn't even memorable in doing so. Now, best of the week, oh yeah, 21 Savage and Metro Boomin obviously get both those, but I'm thinking said and done narrowly beats out Glock in My Lap for the best. Next week, well, I'm not seeing the album bomb coming out of nowhere to take over that I won't predict, so it might just be the fallout of all this, so stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. I'll see you next time.